Take a deep breath and listen. By the end of this reflection, you may begin to see that your intense heart is not a burden. It is the sacred fire of the Spirit. Chosen one, you have spent years, perhaps your entire life, apologizing for the depth of your tears and the sheer weight of your thoughts. You have lived in a world, and often within religious walls, that constantly told you to calm down, to stop overreacting, and to be less sensitive. You have believed that you were somehow broken, carrying a psychological defect that needed to be cured or prayed away. But what if your sensitivity is not a flaw, but a spiritual antenna designed to feel the very heartbeat of the divine? Beloved one, how many times have you retreated into the quiet corners of your room, feeling entirely alienated because a single harsh word or a sudden glimpse of suffering completely undid you? You carry an overwhelming empathy that others simply do not understand. They tell you to grow a thicker skin. They demand that you normalize your emotional responses to fit into their comfortable, predictable boxes. You have been taught that a strong faith means being stoic, unshakable, and entirely rational. Because of this, you have learned to silence your inner world, swallowing your tears so that you would not make others uncomfortable. You sit in pews and listen to sermons that praise emotional detachment as spiritual maturity, leaving you to wonder why God created you with a heart that feels as though it is entirely exposed to the elements. The profound loneliness of this experience cannot be overstated. You are like a tuning fork vibrating at a frequency that the world refuses to hear. You have asked God, in the middle of the night, to simply make you normal, to take away this intensity so that you can navigate life without feeling so deeply exhausted. But wounded believer, I want you to hear this. The world's inability to hold your emotional depth does not mean your depth is a mistake. Your tears are not a sign of spiritual weakness. They are the overflow of a soul that refuses to become numb in a world that profits from apathy. You have been carrying the heavy assumption that your intense feelings are a distraction from God, when in reality, they are the very medium through which the Spirit is trying to reach you. When we look closely at the religious systems that shaped us, we begin to uncover a deeply unsettling truth. We have been handed a false image of God. We were told about a distant, cold judge residing somewhere in the sky, a manager of morality who only rewards calm, collected, and perfectly predictable behavior. This image of the divine operates entirely on the principles of conventional wisdom. Borg's work points us toward the realization that conventional wisdom always rewards conformity and punishes those who feel too deeply. You were taught to fear your own intensity, told that a good Christian is always stoic, always peaceful, always in control of every passing emotion. But this sterile image of God leaves no room for the messy, beautiful, overwhelming reality of a heart fully alive in the Spirit. This transactional deity demands that you perform your faith by shutting down your authentic emotional experiences. When you wept out of frustration or fell into deep sorrow, you were told you lacked faith. When you questioned the injustice around you with burning passion, you were told to be submissive. This framework of religion creates a suffocating environment where only the emotionally detached survive, while those who feel deeply are slowly starved of spiritual oxygen. It turns God into an architect of repression, a divine warden who favors those who can suppress their humanity the best. But this is not the sacred. This is an idol created by human anxiety, designed to keep people manageable. The true divine does not demand the amputation of your feelings. A God who asks you to become less human in order to become more holy is not a God worth following. Child of God, it is time to dismantle this distant judge. It is time to stop viewing your complex, vibrant, and fiercely sensitive soul as a rebellion against heaven. The very fact that you cannot simply shrug off the pain of the world, the fact that you lie awake pondering the mysteries of existence, is profound evidence that you are profoundly connected to the source of life. You are not failing at faith. You are breaking free from a shallow, sanitized version of it. The Spirit is calling you out of the sterile boxes of conventional wisdom and inviting you into a wild, untamed relationship with the sacred, where every tear and every tremor of your heart is recognized as an act of profound worship. If God is not the distant judge demanding our emotional numbness, then who is God? And how do we relate to this presence when our hearts are completely overwhelmed? In Borg's framework, God is the encompassing Spirit, not a distant judge observing our emotional failures. When Elijah collapsed in the cave, completely overwhelmed by his emotions, the encompassing Spirit did not tell him to toughen up or stop overreacting. God met his fragile, exhausted nervous system with a whisper of silence, holding his pain without judgment. The 19th chapter of 1 Kings paints a vivid picture of a man who had reached his absolute limit. Elijah was terrified, depressed, and running for his life. He asked to die because the intensity of his prophetic calling had finally crushed him. The religious expectation would be that God would rebuke Elijah for his lack of faith, or command him to pull himself together and get back to work. But the text reveals something profoundly tender. God gave him sleep. God gave him bread and water. And when God finally spoke, It was not in the terrifying wind, the earth-shattering quake, or the consuming fire. It was in the sound of sheer silence, a gentle, quiet whisper. The encompassing spirit drew near to a broken, overly sensitive, exhausted man and offered him sanctuary. Wounded believer, this is how the divine responds to your emotional overload. You do not need to perform strength, but here we must exercise gentle discernment. There is a difference between the sensitivity born of unhealed trauma, the kind that makes you constantly hyper-vigilant and fearful of abandonment, and the sacred sensitivity that allows you to feel the heartbeat of God. The Spirit's whisper is always inviting you to heal those old wounds, so that your deep feeling can become a vessel for compassion, rather than a source of constant anxiety. This brings us to a radical re-seeing of the Scriptures themselves. For so long, the Bible was handed to you as a weapon, a rigid rulebook used to police your feelings and enforce a toxic positivity onto your pain. You were given verses completely out of context to silence your weeping, told to rejoice always, even when your heart was breaking. But Marcus Borg taught the principle that Scripture is a sacrament, a metaphorical window through which the sacred becomes transparent to us, not a rigid rulebook to police our feelings. Scripture was never meant to be a weapon used to silence your weeping or force a toxic positivity onto your pain. It is a living, breathing testament of men and women who loved, grieved, and argued with the divine passionately. Consider the Psalms of Lament, such as the 42nd Psalm, where the psalmist's tears have been their food day and night. These words were not censored by God. They were canonized. They were preserved as holy texts because the divine honors the raw, unfiltered honesty of a broken heart. You are allowed to lament. You are allowed to bring your intense sorrow, your profound confusion, and your burning anger to the text, knowing that you join a millennia-old chorus of believers who felt just as deeply as you do. The Scriptures validate your intensity. They do not condemn it. And nowhere is this sacred intensity more visible than in the person of Jesus. Borg's reading of Jesus helps us see him as a spirit mystic and a teacher of unconventional wisdom, subverting the purity systems that demanded emotional detachment. When Jesus stood at the tomb of his friend Lazarus, in the 11th chapter of John, he did not offer religious platitudes. He did not tell Mary and Martha that everything happens for a reason, or that they should just have more faith to avoid sadness. Jesus wept. He groaned in his spirit and was deeply troubled. He shattered the religious illusion that holy people must remain detached and unaffected by the suffering of the world. Chosen one, you are called to this same compassionate depth. Your ability to cry over the brokenness of this world is not a weakness. It is the exact path of compassion Jesus walked. When you feel a burning indignation at injustice, or when your heart breaks for someone who is marginalized, you are participating in the holy rebellion of Jesus. But remember, while this righteous anger is sacred, do not let it curdle into a bitterness that consumes your own soul. The way of Jesus is not about carrying the weight of the world alone. It is about letting your sensitivity move you toward healing action, while remaining anchored in the profound peace of the encompassing Spirit. You are the vessel through which the divine sheds tears for the hurting. Your intense heart is a holy instrument, finely tuned to the suffering and the beauty of creation. Do not let anyone convince you to put it out of tune. How, then, do we live with this holy instrument without being destroyed by it? We must undergo a fundamental shift in our understanding of faith. For years, you were told that faith meant having all the right answers, believing a specific set of doctrines without a shadow of a doubt, and maintaining a constant state of spiritual certainty. This intellectualized version of faith is exactly what causes sensitive souls so much anguish, because your heart knows that life is far too complex for simple formulas. Marcus Borg taught the principle that faith is not giving mental assent to dogmas, but radically trusting the goodness of the ocean in which we swim. You do not need to fix yourself or build heavy iron walls to block out the intensity of life. Faith is radically trusting that as you float on the deep sea of God's goodness, your fragile, open heart will not drown, but will be safely held. This is faith as fiducia, a profound relational trust. It is the ability to surrender the need to control your emotions, and instead allow them to flow through you like a river, trusting that the riverbed of the Spirit will hold the current. You do not have to apologize for feeling overwhelmed. You simply have to fall back into the arms of the one who holds the universe. Trusting God means trusting that your sensitivity was given to you on purpose. It means believing that the divine is experiencing the beauty and the tragedy of this world through your very senses. When you look at a sunset and feel an inexplicable urge to weep from its beauty, that is the Spirit rejoicing within you. When you feel the sharp sting of a friend's sorrow, that is the Spirit mourning through you. You are not a defective believer. You are a living, breathing sacrament of divine empathy. One learning to trust again. It is time to lay down the heavy armor. You have worn it for so long, trying to protect your sensitive soul from a harsh, unfeeling world and from religious spaces that demanded your conformity. You are safe here, in the quiet, encompassing presence of the Spirit. Your beautiful, intense, overflowing heart finally belongs exactly as it is. You do not need to become someone else to be loved by God. The divine does not wish for you to be less. The divine desires for you to be fully, vibrantly, and unapologetically alive. Let the sacred fire of the Spirit burn within you, not to consume you, but to illuminate the dark corners of a world that desperately needs your light. Breathe in the peace of this belonging. Breathe out the shame of being too much. You are fiercely loved. You are intimately known. And your deep, feeling heart is the greatest gift you could ever offer to the sacred, chosen one. Rest now in the absolute certainty that you are held in the endless embrace of grace. Peace be with you.